Thank you so much for being here. Your presenter is Dali, moi. And welcome to Beyond Stereotypes. I decided to teach on this because I've been having a lot of really interesting conversations with people. So I want to start with a quick reflection. It was inspired by these conversations with people to kind of get our minds going about the stereotypes that live within us. And I want you to silently read each statement and don't say your answer out loud. But if it helps, I can read it out loud. When I say CEO, what image comes to mind? And when I say immigrant, what do you see in your head? Or when I say stay-at-home parent, who do you see? Or what do you see? And when I say Gen Z, what words pop up in your head? So before we go any further, I want to let you know that it is normal for you to have a certain image or words come up. And you might be surprised at what you notice, and it's okay to not be okay with it. It's also okay to be all right with whatever came to mind. And every single one of us has subconscious beliefs. And not because we're bad people or anything like that, but because we're humans. And subconscious beliefs are beliefs that are right below the surface of our mind. So we have, of course, awareness, right? Like we know that an apple can be red or green. So we are very aware of that. Our subconscious is that middle layer where we kind of know what we believe, but we're not always aware of it the way that we are when, we look at that apple. And then we have, of course, our unconscious beliefs, which is a lot deeper within us, and it's harder to identify what lives there. And so when we're thinking about things like when I say CEO, what image comes to mind? Something will come into your head, either a word or an image or both. And I want you to think about what came up. Feel free to share, but you don't have to. And now think about, why do you think that that image or that word came up first? Was there an event? Was there a person that embodied CEO and that just stuck with you? Kind of like when you have a favorite name, right? That favorite name came from somewhere. It might have been somebody that you're really, really fond of. It might be because it's a family member, or maybe it's a name you really don't like because maybe it was your elementary school bully or that annoying teacher that just would not let it go when you didn't read perfectly well or anything like that. So our brains are wired to categorize, and it is a survival tool. The problem is when we let those shortcuts lead our behaviors instead of our values, then things can go wrong. I'm sure that you've experienced it or you have witnessed it. So this workshop is not about guilt or shame. This workshop is about awareness and skill building. So before I move forward, would anybody like to share?
When I hear CEO, I think older white dude.
Okay. And do you know where that came from?
Yeah, because every CEO I worked for
Mhm.
was an older white dude.
What about words? Anything come up?
Um, um,
I like that mischievous laughter.
I know.
There's a story
Um,
behind that.
let's see, aggressive popped into my head, like in a like aggressive, not in a necessarily in a bad way, but just like they got to where they were because they were aggressive. Um, Ambitious, I guess, is actually the better word for it. Ambitious is the word that
Interesting. Now, would you use the word ambitious for a woman?
potentially, but it's funny. I think I know fewer female CEOs and more women entrepreneurs who are the presidents, technically CEOs of their own company. But when I think just the word CEO on its own, I think of a bigger structure and I think of a man. And
Right.
so, yeah, I would use ambitious for some women.
Hmm. So as you recognize the words that came up and who you saw, how do you feel about that?
Annoyed.
Right. Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
me
feel
too.
like I should be more, I'm so enlightened about the women's movement and about feminism and about equal rights. And yet, when I hear that word, I still think it should, it's an older white man. And that
Right.
really kind of pisses me off that that's the image that's been
Yeah.
hammered into my head.
All right. Anyone else want to share?
Totally agree. I did see a woman in a power suit when you said
Hmm.
CEO, and I think that's because we've been so into this world of supporting women that I think I might kind of be at the place where I've flipped the switch, where it
Right.
is second nature, but also I didn't come up in the corporate world.
Yeah.
You know, I've always been an independent entrepreneur, so it hasn't been so ingrained in me personally, even though I know as a society it is.
Mhm. Right. And you're not alone. Like Amy, the first time I had this test, it was in college. So I went to college when I was what, like mid 30s, early 30s, mid 30s. And I was in total denial because I recognized how ingrained these things were. I was mad at myself because I was like, how could I have let this happen? But that's what I strive to tell people. It is not your fault because nobody is actively teaching you. This is something that you have to start talking about and inculcating into every human as soon as they come out of the womb. And it starts so subtly, if you think about it, before a baby is born. We have sometimes selected colors. We assign a color and we assign names. We assign toys, clothing, all sorts of things, the car seat, my goodness, all of it, because the markets want to sell a certain idea and it has worked. They have spent billions and billions of dollars over the many years and it works. And again, like what you were saying, you grew up seeing mainly men as CEOs. So here's another one I'm going to throw out there. And you don't have to say anything, but think, who do you think of when you see it, when you see the word or when you hear the word a teacher? Teacher. What about professor? Nurse, surgeon, dancer, painter. Do you see the pattern?
Mhm.
And what's the pattern?
Woman, man, woman, man, woman,
Gender
man.
assignments.
There's something else in there. Do you think you might be able to figure it out aside from man and woman?
It's the classic stereotypes.
The other one I want you to take notice is that one gets paid more than the other.
Right.
And that's usually
Oh.
yeah. The teacher gets paid more, does the same job as a professor, but the professor is usually a man and gets paid way more.
Yeah.
The nurse actually does way more work than the surgeon, but the surgeon is very specialized in one thing, so he gets paid more, and usually it's a man.
Mhm.
Hmm.
So we have to pay attention to these things. Like you have the CEO, and maybe you have like the HR president. And most of the times, if you see a woman up there, it's the HR person. Or is it what is it they call them now? The
The
vice president?
marketing,
Yeah.
PR people are always women. Yeah.
Or the chief of
Oh, yeah,
people
yeah, yeah.
engagement or something. Right?
Yep.
I'm like, that's interesting. Okay. But anyway, let me get back to the slide. I'm glad that you saw that. Okay. So we're identifying how these ideas live in us, and we all agree it bugs us. So you cannot interrupt a belief that you have not noticed, right? Like I had no idea until this professor taught this to me, and I was so mad at her. I was so mad at her, but really I was mad at myself. And bias is something that you learn at every stage of life. So we have to be very conscious, and we have to use our constructive criticism all the time so that we don't fall into that system that can be oppressive, not just to others, but to ourselves. We have awareness, the choice of awareness, and it's really, really hard. I was reading years ago an article about how many people are really aware. And these stats came out saying, every single one that I read, that it's actually less than 15% of people in the US are self-aware. And like 83% of surveyors, people who took the survey, said that they were very self-aware. So like you believe the majority of people believe that they're very self-aware, but really it's like less than 15%. So I sure to say, be patient with people when you're speaking with them, because they really, really believe that they know themselves that well. In reality, most of the times it'll be a no, not that well. So when we have that awareness, then you have a choice, and that choice creates that opportunity to be more inclusive, to learn, and to listen very closely. It takes a lot of work, and it gives you that pause button, because when you figure out that you have this bias living in your life, that you believe a certain stereotype, you can possibly, like me, get mad at yourself or whoever made you realize what happened. But then it's important, I think, to look back and see, okay, where did that come from? Was it my parenting? Was it friends? Is it television? Is it what I see all the time? And where else are these beliefs living within me? So let's think about a recent professional interaction. Let's see. Think about, did you assume something about a person before you knew them? I think we all have this. I really try not to, because I know when people meet me, they have said a lot of things. For example, oh, you have a master's. Like, you're very surprised about that. Or like, oh, you were in the military. You were in the military? Oh, were you a clerk? Were you in finance? Were you in HR? I was a freaking mechanic. Thank you. And a good one too. So like, where do you think those assumptions come from? Especially when people walk up to me, and even Cherokee Nation peoples, for some reason, always think I'm part of their nation, which is, I'm like, oh, thank you. I'm not, because I have indigenous features. So we have these ideas because we have been molded into believing certain things. I think that they're good for a baseline, but never as a concrete belief about people. I know that if I see a woman with a baby, she's most likely a mother of that baby, but not necessarily. She could be the aunt, she could be the babysitter, she could be a foster mom. But so you see, so it is good to be aware of those stereotypes and, where people usually fit into those roles. But we never have to make that concrete decision until we have that conversation with them and get to know them. So let's be aware of, how is the media, even today, shaping what you believe? How is your family doing that? Where you work, the people you hang out with, even the experiences that you have, because there's also people who say they have a really negative interaction with a Nicaraguan person. And then from there on, they're like, I am never going to date a Nicaraguan person again. They're crazy, you know? So you generalize, which is not fair to those people who are from Nicaragua, because not all are the same, you know? Any comments, anything you want to share before I move on? All right, let's move on then. So we have intent and we have the impact. So intent is what you mean. So when that person said, oh, you have a master's, I kind of understood what she meant. She meant most people who are immigrants and are poor can't afford to go to college. You went to college. So other people might think what she meant was, I can't believe that you're smart enough to get a degree. So, her intent, I have no idea what it was. I know it didn't feel good. So the impact was, ooh, there goes another one, assuming I'm less than, I'm not capable of. And so that's the impact that landed within me. And what do I do with that? I try not to internalize it because I go back to myself, what I believed. And I'll tell you one thing, when I came to the US, my mother had heard all these ideas about white people, Black people. And she upheld white people like on a pedestal. She said, oh, white people are really good. They're very honorable. They don't lie. They don't cheat, blah, 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 blah. And she says to me, I was getting ready to go to school for the first time in the US, elementary school. I'm 7. She says, Dali, be careful, las morenas, the Black girls, because they're very aggressive. And I was like, oh, oh. And I remember I had seen Black people in Nicaragua because, especially around the coastline, a lot of people who fled or who were, stolen from their lands were brought over to pretty much every part of the world. And so it's not like I had never seen Black people. I had never really interacted with them. And if I did, it was very briefly. I didn't think anything of it. I do remember seeing a white lady, blonde hair, blue eyes, very skinny. And she was at the Catholic church right across my street. And she walked over to me and she must have been saying something sweet because she was like bending over. She's like, oh my gosh. And she was like, kind of like grabbing my face, probably saying like, oh, look at her, how cute. I hope she was saying how cute, but we'll never know. That's my story. I'm sticking with it. She was giving me compliments. And that was the first time I saw a real white person, aside from coming to the US. So I go to school. I have no idea what people are saying because on the way here, I remember on the train, my mom was teaching me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and apple. That's all I remember. And I get lost and I wanted to go to the restroom. I walk in where I see this little person on the door. I'm assuming that's a bathroom. And I walk in and there's boys standing up against the wall. And I'm like, something's not right here. What is that? There were urinals. I had never seen urinals in my life. So I run out of there scared. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get in trouble. And from far away, I see this young Black woman coming towards me. And the first thing I think of is, oh, my mom told me, be careful about the Black girls because they're aggressive. And I'm instantly petrified. She inculcated that idea that I needed to be careful, that they are bad. That's an awful thing to do to a kid. She had good intentions, but she taught me to be prejudiced through love, through a loving action of trying to keep me safe. So these ideas don't come when it comes from family. It doesn't come from a malicious intent most of the times. It comes through an act of love. And that can be very confusing, especially for younger kids. So that impact was like enormous for me. Lucky for me, I've always been a very inquisitive person and I watch people. So I come home like, my mom is wrong. What she said and what I'm seeing and experiencing are totally different. So thank goodness I learned that. And I never had a conversation. Actually, now that I'm saying this story, I don't think I've ever shared that story with my mom. I just moved on. And so the intent and that impact really matters on how we impact others, our intent, and vice versa. So think about if you've ever had good intentions but still caused that harm to somebody. Maybe not like the one that I just shared. Because I'm pretty sure I have one that sticks out was this friend that I made. And I hadn't seen her in a long time, Black girl. She had long purple braids. And in Latino culture, it's normal to be like, oh my gosh, look at your hair, it's so pretty, and you touch it. And then I reached over, and as soon as I did, I was like, oh, you don't touch a Black person's hair, because, you know, the history of how they were objectified, you know. And I was like, oh, and I remember looking at her face, and she had that, oh, there goes another one, just like I did when that lady said, you know, oh, you have a master's. I instantly regretted it. I was like, oh. And I was like, ooh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have done that. And she's like, it's all right. Lucky for me, because she knew we've known each other a while by then. So she knew it was not ill intended. But what helped repair it was that I immediately said, I'm sorry. And it was genuine. And we had history. That was very important too. And that's not always the case. So here's where I invite people to go from curiosity to connection. So when you have the opportunity, you can, if especially if you have a close relationship with people, it's like you can ask why certain things land a certain way, but this is the way you don't do that. Like, and this has happened to me as well. Where they say, like, why do you people always, instead it's like, why do people from your background, you know, like more respectful? And it is okay to ask that, but I also urge you to just make sure that you have that comfort level with the person. You can always also start with, I want to ask you a question. It might sound very ignorant or ill-intended, but I just want to let you know it's not. You give me permission to ask you something that might seem weird or maybe even offensive to you. And when you come at people like that, they're usually going to say, yeah, okay. If it is bad, I'm going to let you know though. I'm like, okay, cool. So then you ask, why do people like you always, and I really still don't like the people like you. I think it should still be posed a different way. But again, it depends on that comfort level. And then, you know, would you be open to sharing your experience about, like, people have asked me that. I mean, you ladies, some of you, you know, Amy and Nancy, about my immigration story. And I love that, because when people ask me, would you be open to sharing about your experience with blah, blah, blah? I'm like, oh, this is so cool. They want to learn. And I must matter enough. And they're not going to a book, they're going to me, the source. Because some books, you know, some are written by others, not the one who experienced the thing. So always before you ask what is the intention about for this question? Because if it's just a judge, obviously don't ask it. But if you have genuine curiosity to connect with that person, it will be felt, and you will have a very joyful conversation. The other thing I want you to ask is, you know, am I in the position of power here? Because even if you ask a person the right way, if you're my boss and you want to know something, sometimes that's not a very good idea, because some of us are always on guard because our own backgrounds or information can be used against us. So especially younger people who are most likely not very assertive and sure of themselves, they might feel an obligation to answer, but no one owes you an answer or an explanation. And also, like, ask yourself, would you ask this question to yourself and feel okay? Like, or would you like somebody to ask you that same way, and would you feel okay about it? And also, is this about learning or satisfying that curiosity? Like, one that I've heard a lot of from the LGBTQ community is, which is super awful, is, yeah, trans community. They're like, so what surgeries did you have done? And I'm like, what is it any of your business? what are you trying to learn from there? That's just plain, I think, curiosity. Focus on what is really important, the person. So always ask yourself, how would this land for me if somebody asked me that? The other question to ask as well can be, when you ask yourself, would I be asking the same question to a person who were just like me? Because sometimes we really might want to ask something that's really inappropriate. It is not relevant to really getting to know the person. And the whole point is to learn, right? To eradicate those stereotypes that might live within. And when you miss the mark, this is very important. This is when, first of all, if it happens to you, always please tell the person. And then if you do it to somebody else, just say, thank you. Well, if it happens to you, thank you for telling me that was offensive. I see how that landed now. For now on, I will not ask that question, or I will pose it differently, because it shows, although you made that mistake, if you're telling me that your intention was not bad, if you're humble enough to own it and immediately say, hey, I'm really sorry, that shows furthermore that you really didn't have the intention of just being a, ill-intended person that's trying to either characterize you a certain way, or judge you a certain way. Because too oftentimes, there are questions that are asked for the purpose of running back and making fun of you about whatever it is they're asking. Like, for example, for me, the the folklore dress. I remember there was a boyfriend that I had when I was like 15, and it was around, I think it was like Cinco de Mayo, and as you all know, Cinco de Mayo is not really like, it's not Independence Day of Mexico. I'm also not Mexican, but I remember I was so open to learning a very traditional Mexican dance, and I was braided up and everything. I looked very indigenous, and I had the dress on. I had been practicing for like 3 months with a teacher of folklore dance, and I loved it. I've always loved dancing. This boyfriend comes up to me. He sees me dressed up in all the garb, and he says, "You look like an Indian. Don't do that. It's like you're gonna humiliate yourself." And I thought, why would you say that? Like, I am indigenous, like my lineage why should I be ashamed? And he wanted to know about the dress and stuff. And I was like, but why do you want to know about the dress now after you said that? To me, now that became more of like, see, I'm going to go prove a point of how ridiculous you are. So his inquisitiveness was not to learn, it was to go and try it. It's like what I've said before, don't listen to argue and win the debate. Listen to learn, to understand. You still don't have to agree, but learn and understand. And so when you miss that mark and you apologize and you say, okay, I see what that did for you. And you can even say, hey, can you give me another chance? I still want to learn more. And most of the time that works. It's showing that genuine apology and interest. The other thing is small little harms. And this is a form of bullying, because you know me, I'm always got to throw the bullying lessons in there. Jokes that rely on stereotypes are usually very hurtful. And I can understand that you can have teachable moments through comedy. It's definitely possible, but I think not everyone can do it. I think it takes a very skilled person. One of the people that I love listening to is Josh Johnson, because he hits a mark every time. He can take a stereotype, make fun of it, but make the point about how ridiculous it is to be saying that thing. And the other thing is dismissing a lived experience. This is something that I did to somebody, by accident. So my friend was at a store, and he's Black, and he walks into the store to deliver something. And the person in the store was an older white lady, and she called him boy. And this is the South. So it's really rare for somebody in the South to not understand why calling a grown man boy is very offensive. And so my first question, because my go-to is, let's always give people the benefit of doubt. That was a wrong time for me to think that. Because my first thing was, are you sure that's how she meant it? And immediately I was like, ooh, I should not have done that, because I heard his aggravation. And he was like, yes, I am sure. I am positive. I know what I heard, and the tone in her face. And I immediately apologized. I was like, I'm so sorry. I was trying to give the lady the benefit of doubt, but then at the same time, I see how that makes it feel like I'm completely dismissing what you experienced. And I'm not trying to say that you're exaggerating what happened. I felt horrible. But I learned from that. And we continue to have, and again, that was another person that knew who I was. So they're like, okay, got it, check, let's move on. Let's not hang on to it. So it can be very delicate, and it can happen that fast, so quickly. And something that I hear a lot today is, oh, I'm just so exhausted. All these woke people, you have to be careful about what you say and blah, 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 blah. I think that those people still don't understand, because they haven't experienced it, or because they refuse to want to understand that this is something that happens to certain people all the time, and it is draining. So the other thing too is expecting others to educate you. Well, why didn't he tell me that it was offensive? Because it's not our job, it's not your job. It's every individual has a responsibility of educating themselves, whether it's by listening to conversations like this one, by listening to a podcast, opening up a book, or simply going and asking somebody who's like, going to let you have those conversations. And you don't have to walk up to them and say, hey, can you be my person to educate me? you know these conversations usually happen when you have a diverse group of friends. So the other challenge, something I want to challenge you on, and this is something I do a lot, especially with parents, is if you can take a look at your friend group and you can identify like several different people of different ethnicities, you're most likely good. But if all of the friend group members look the same or have the same background, maybe you need to diversify. I know that it can be challenging due to region. For example, I live in a very conservative, quote unquote, white county. So Latinos are not in huge numbers at all. So my kids, when they go to school, most of their classmates, are going to be predominantly white or some Black kids. Latinos, not so much. And but then when we were in California, it was very diverse. So we had like people from India, from Afghanistan, from Japan, Korea, Vietnam, Mexico, Salvadorian, Guatemalan, white, and something that I always encourage people, because people say, oh, they're just white people. No, no, no. Even within quote unquote white people, there's diversity. We just don't talk about it. Recently, I met this woman who we were having this conversation, and she said, I don't want to identify just as a white woman. Can't I just say I'm German Irish? I said, absolutely, you can. That's pretty cool, I think. It's cool to know that you have, ancestors from those two areas, because I recognize when people see you, they're like, just blanket statement, you're white. That sucks. It's like erasing your lineage. That's not cool. And, she's been told, no, you can't do that because you're a white woman. And I'm like, no, nobody can tell you what to label yourself or how to identify. It's for everybody, it applies. And there will be some people that do not agree with what I just said, but that's what I believe. I said what I say, dang it, I'm sticking to it, at least for me. Because that's the beauty of diversity and learning about everybody, not just those of us that are classified as minorities or of color. And remember, color is something that was created by governments because like it's crazy. I was having a conversation earlier today with a friend, and she was saying like, I'm not African American, I'm not black, look at my skin color. I'm like, you're right, you're brown, you just a darker shade of brown, but nobody's actually black. So anyway, so yeah, it can be very enlightening, interesting. Just tread waters, just be careful and don't expect people to educate you. And so I want to ask you, what is one belief that you are willing to question moving forward? We all have something, even if we have been working on, eradicating these ideas. Let's dig deep and think, what is there within that you probably shouldn't? It might be hard to dismantle, but let's think about that. Because remember, like, just like you might have that thing, others might have that belief about you. And that doesn't always feel that great. And that is my presentation for today. Thank you so much. Um, I do have a guide. I'm going to be sending it out to Amy and Nancy to post with this session. Please follow me on Instagram and on LinkedIn. And I also have a YouTube, the Dali Talks podcast, and check out my website. So thank you so much. I'd just like to open it up for questions or comments.
That was excellent.
Thank you.
That's
I
my
feel like I
comment.
just ended abruptly there, but
No, I thought it was good and it flowed very well. And I think
great.
everything you said is like, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the storytelling usually helps.
It's really great that you're willing to be open about experiences you've personally had, or
Mhm.
maybe you felt badly afterwards, whether the other person felt badly or not.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Where you felt like, oh, I could have done that better.
Oh, I've had my share of stick my foot in my mouth
We
moments.
all have,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Mhm. And that too, I want people to not feel ashamed, especially because, you've learned from it. Now, if you haven't, then you need to go back and learn from it. But once you move past it and you learn from it, like share that story with somebody else. And I always go back, me and kids. I'm always like, if I were a kid, I would have loved to have known this. And so I'm always drilling things into my kids, and they're like, oh my gosh, mom. So yeah, I'm glad you like the stories. And I always tell people, especially in the sisterhood, I'm an open book. If you do have a very uncomfortable question that you want to ask, I will be your safe space. I'm doing that. And I know it's not my responsibility, but I want to be, because I recognize that there are a lot of people that are not bold enough to get that vulnerable and to answer those questions because they might have some previous trauma, that really does exist, because we've experienced some things, and some people can get past it and some can't. I'm sure you can experience the same thing. So I'm open for that.
yeah, and we've talked to a lot of women who are afraid to say the wrong thing,
Yeah.
and whether they're a white woman and they're nervous about talking to a person of color, or whether they're straight and they're afraid to talk to someone who's LGBTQ, or they're able-bodied and they're afraid to talk to someone with a disability and say the wrong language. And we always say the same thing you say, like, what is the intent behind the way you presented it? Did you present it in a way that it's clear you're not being rude or condescending or making
Right.
assumptions, but you're really trying to learn? And as long as you go into it with the right intent. If you don't know the right terminology yet and you can be guided to the right words, it's okay.
Yeah, it is. And on the handout, I give a lot of examples, um, things that I've experienced and also things that I've heard. Like one that I'll never forget. I thought it was funny though, but it's looking back, I'm like, wow, I can't believe that this was said to me. Um, when I was younger and people were trying to date me, it was like, ooh, I want a spicy Latina. Do you know how to cook? You know how to cook, right? Or or oh my gosh, you're Nicaraguan? How exotic. And I was like, man, I'm not a freaking animal. Like that was my response.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I'm not a freaking animal, man. Like exotic. That's what you call like a panther or something. You know? You know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I like to share the stories because they're a great example, but they make people laugh. And I'm like, they're real stories. Like they actually happen. I was looking at my old army letters, people used to write back in the day because we didn't have, email. And there are several letters that I have from some guys who say comments like that, like, oh, I want you to have all my babies because, Latinas popped them all out. And I'm like, oh my God.
Wow.
And the spin. Yeah, it's like, I want a Latina because, they take care of men. They don't want careers. They just want to be home and have the babies and take care of men. I'm like, wow, dude, you're barking up the wrong tree. Like I am not the
Yeah,
one.
as you're serving in the army and kicking ass as a mechanic and becoming a drill sergeant. It's like, yeah,
Right.
might not be your girl.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I have a question for you,
Mm-hmm.
if it's okay.
Yeah.
I have noticed that some people, just like when they're like, well, black people, like they're afraid
Mm-hmm.
to say black people.
Mhm.
I've noticed there are some people who don't want to say white people,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So, so that's something I had to get comfortable with to say, white people, because today, what JD Vance said is like, you're going to live in a land where you don't have to be ashamed of being white. And I'm like, okay, that came from somewhere
Mm-hmm.
with the story of, oh, us versus them. So, in your experience, do you see that being an issue where non-white people say, oh, when they refer to people who are white, do they feel offended?
Do white people feel offended?
Like if I'm saying like, when white people do this, or
Oh,
like, or I was, in a group and I was only Latina and everybody else was white, do you think that
it's
they feel
interesting.
like,
Yeah, I know what you mean. There's a certain um there's a certain thing sometimes where people say like white women.
mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah, that can sound
And it can
aggressive.
sound like and and objectively I go, well, yeah, like if you look at, for example, the last election or the election 5 years ago, white women voted a certain way. And, a larger number of white women voted a certain way. And
Yeah.
so it became, well, white women didn't step up in a way that other people may have wanted them to. And
Mhm.
I understand that objectively. Every once in a while, it's like, to me, it's like any other group. It's like, I don't look at you and expect you to represent all Latina women to me. I know, you know, I know where you come from. I know what your experience has been here. I know what your experience, Dali, is as a Latina woman. I don't want to be necessarily grouped in with all white women when it's said in a particular way,
Mhm.
but I can objectively step back from it and go, I get why it's a sea of faceless white women, and I am, but I know that the people who know me know that I'm not the type of person that
Not
maybe
that
being
white woman.
referred to.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
not.
not that white woman for
I
Yeah.
think
God's sake.
I think it goes back to the intention. Like
Yeah,
when we hear the people talking about white women in a certain way, especially currently,
yeah,
we know they're doing it to educate and to call people forward to like, hey, we need to be better. We need to do different. So it does feel uncomfortable because you're like, wait a minute. And then you recognize, okay,
Yeah.
see why I'm feeling that way, but also identifying, yes, I am not that block of white women, and I should actually be trying to help bring them
Right.
Yeah.
into the fold, so to speak, like,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
come forward and acknowledge. But I think it goes back to the intention. Like if you're calling out a group of people with ill intent, then it is obviously not going to be good for anybody.
Right.
But if the intention is
Yeah.
good,
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've actually had people in our community say to us, "You're not like other white women." And when I hear that, it's like, oh, badge of honor. I'm not like
Yeah.
other white women.
can I
That's
get a
good.
button, please?
Yeah.
But then it's like you take a step back and go like, oh shit, is that how most people of color think of us? Is like all white women are like this. And it's, so yeah, it's but again, intent. I
I'm
most
also,
get to know us, they know,
yeah, I'm also kind of willing to take the guilty until proven innocent burden of that,
Yeah.
given history, and go like, yeah, I understand why
Mm-hmm.
we may be grouped together, white people or white women or whatever it is, grouped together in a certain way. Statistically, the odds are you might hit upon that.
Well,
And
and
so,
certain people's lived experiences, right? And then,
yeah,
so to be given the opportunity to prove it wrong is,
yeah.
I
Right.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm okay with that. Like, I feel like it's not something that should be assumed that I'm going to be open and curious and supportive and all those things. And if I have to earn that trust, to me, it's about trust. So I understand why I need to earn that trust.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I think when we're having these kind of conversations, to go back about being afraid to say something wrong, it's almost like anticipating or planning on. The chances are I am going to say something wrong at some point. So
Right.
We
just
all are.
Yeah.
accepting that and then having a plan for when I do, what am I going to do? How do I take, like how do I repair and how do I, make sure to do
Yeah.
better in the future?
yeah.
Mhm.
Right.
And I
one thing
think
want-
part of that is from listening. Like, I think African American, you were saying earlier, you were talking to someone earlier about African American, like, I used to be very uncomfortable, like, what's the terminology I should be using? And then Nancy and I did a lot of interviews with Black people. And when we would sit down to do the interview, I would listen to the way they referred to themselves.
Yeah.
And I was seeing that more and more people were saying Black. And it was during a time where African American was the term that was kind of the more acceptable term
Right.
according to some people. But then I would sit down and I would talk to people and I would hear, okay, this person is referring to himself as a Black man. So I will, when I need to ask a question that draws upon that, I will mirror that language back to them.
Right. Yeah.
I won't
Well, and
necessarily
also
mirror that back to everybody, but like, if you listen to what people want you to say, a lot of times the breadcrumbs are there, and it's about listening and being respectful
Yeah.
of their experience and what
Yeah.
they're projecting to you. They want
Yeah,
you
and
to
also
mirror back.
not making assumptions, right? I mean, like you were saying about your
what I
friend
was gonna say.
Dali, and not all Black people are African Americans.
Uh-huh.
Like, so to make that assumption is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, our brother-in-law or ex-brother-in-law, whatever, is from Cape Verde. Like, yes, he lives in the United States, but he's not a citizen. He's not a legal citizen. He's all here on his visa, and so he's not African American.
Mhm.
He's African and he's Black and he lives in America. So to make the assumption that all Black people is African American is not wrong, is
Well, I also had to learn that not all Black appearing people identify as Black either.
right.
Because like my friend Fred years ago, she didn't identify as Black or African American. She identified as West Indian. And I was
Mhm.
like, oh, that's new. I'm just this 19-year-old listening to this conversation and I'm learning about them. They're learning about me. And
Mhm.
it was just mind blowing because for me, it wasn't like at the age of 7, there was a welcome committee that told me everything about US colloquialism and stereotypes and the history of racism, the history of certain words and slurs and things like that. I had to learn by trial and error experiences. And luckily, every time I had an oops like that, it was not extremely damaging. It was usually around people who knew me and they were like, okay, let me just explain why that's wrong.
Yeah.
And I appreciated it so much. And I still have those lessons. And I think it's going to continue to happen because we have such a mix of people from all over the world.
Yeah.
And it's impossible to learn about every single one of them. So the best that we can do is say, thank you for that teachable moment. You know, I'm sorry, I did not know. I will keep that in mind. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's always evolving too, right? Like what's standard language, like the African American thing, it's like that was standard language for some years. So
Right.
that evolved into something else. It's appropriate maybe sometimes, but it's not the common terminology. And so there's also just like staying aware of things evolving.
And
I have
staying, and
I have a question for, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and staying curious.
Right.
Yes.
Mhm.
That is key.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have a question?
Yeah, I have a question for you because to me, Latina is one of those words too, right? Where it's like AAPI. It's like if you look at what's represented by AAPI, I don't think people realize
Mhm.
how many different cultures from
Right.
all around the world that those letters represent.
Right.
And I feel like Latina is one of those things, those terms where it's like, is that cool? Or
It depends who you ask.
yeah, and I
So,
know that
yeah.
there, so I've never asked you what you prefer, and I would like to know
Oh,
specifically what
yeah.
you prefer.
I prefer as Latina, but when I'm being included in a group of men and women, I prefer Latinx.
Okay, so
And a
Latinx
lot
is
of,
cool.
right, like as a whole, people hate, the majority of Latinos hate Latinx
Hmm.
because they feel like it is a force of change within the community.
Mm.
And what some people's rebuttals is, don't complain about Latinx is not changing our language. Our original language is not Spanish. That's the colonizers' language. Just like my own food, years ago, I was trying to learn where certain ingredients or staple Nicaraguan food came from. And every time I went to one, I was just more and more depressed because I learned that my favorite foods are actual iterations of, versions of Spaniard food. They took our indigenous ingredients, swapped them out, brought in theirs. And what we eat today is not actual like indigenous Nicaraguan food, it's Spaniard. Broke my heart because I'm trying to teach my kids like this is who we are, where we come from. And every time I was like, ugh, it's disappointing. I don't think that people who don't get to have this conversation with me understand that that is how we feel the erasure, right? Through little things like our foods. Like folklore is so important because of the dance and the dances come from usually like country people who did these dances as a form of rebellion or even passing on messages, just like what you saw on the Super Bowl halftime show if you watched it. Like Dembow and all of that. It was like the enslaved Puerto Ricans, the Jibaros, countrymen who used certain dances and certain colors, just for code, just like in slavery here in the United States. The hair sometimes were maps for the Underground Railroad and things like that. So all of those little things have significance. That's why I always go back to like, say my name correctly because might be a history with that name that's significant. We're trying to hold on to every little thing. So when we hear the word Latinx, then there's Latine with the E, Latin with the E at the end. That's for also LGBTQ, that one's more fluid, I believe. And then the X is for every single gender And then you have Latino, which is for male, but it's used as the default for the group of men or women, or, so there's this battle in US, Latinos living in the US about what term is correct. And then there's the word Hispanic. Like, not
Right.
everybody who is Latino is Hispanic. Not every Hispanic identifies as Latino. It's crazy because even Latinos don't know the difference because it all has evolved over the years. And so I always like to ask people, just like, what are your pronouns? How do you identify? Latino, Latino. And the other thing too, I noticed, and this is a me thing, when I hear people speaking Spanish, they Americanize the word with the English accent, like Bad Bunny. He says, my name is, Benito, whatever. He said, he doesn't say Benito, he says Benito. And I feel like that's so important to listen, take note of that, and to not change it, because that is a preservation of who that person is. And Latinos do it not thinking about how that is impacting the non-Spanish speaker community. When I change my name for someone, I am contributing to the erasure of what my name really is. Because Amy, if I were to say your name in Spanish is Ami Arrington. So if you come to Nicaragua and you tell me your name, hi, my name is Amy Harrington, I'm going to say, oh, Amy Harrington, I'm going to do the best that I can. And then, like Nancy, that one's easy, Nancy. Debbie, in Spanish, it would be like Debbie, Debbie, Arel. And the double L is going to throw us off because the double L is a y sound. It's a Y sound. So when I see people on big platforms and they're saying their name with the American accent, I'm like, that's such a opportunity to teach people how to say it properly. My name, when I call, say, like the phone company, and they ask me for my name, I say, yes, my name is, and it's actually Daliana Rivera. And they're like, can you spell your name, please? Or if I just say like Rivera, they're like, they ask me to repeat it again. They just cannot make out Rivera. And I say sometimes it's like river, just added A at the end. They still cannot figure it out. And then until I say Rivera, they're like, oh, Miss Riviera. And I'm like, ay, Dios mío.
That's interesting because I have to, so here's an interesting perspective, right? So I'm always afraid if I pronounce a name with the accent of a different country that I either sound pretentious or I sound like Jida, what's her name? De Laurentiis, when she's like speaking Italian words, and it's like, you were born in Malibu. Like, who are you kidding?
Yeah.
Oh, the fettuccine. It's like, you don't say fettuccine. So I've always felt like I seem weird. Like your name, I try really hard to like, because we've had this conversation, so I'm very like conscious of how I say your name, and also like if we're emailing you, I don't know how to make the accent over the A in your name. So I'll copy and I'll paste it from your email into our email back to you because I want to
Don't feel
respect.
bad. I don't know how to do it either. The only way I know how to do it is on text. Because on text you
Right,
hold
because
it
you have the
over the
thing.
A. So I just copied that and put it in my signature block, but don't
Yeah, so I try. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I forgot, but I try and copy it because I'm like, she has an accent over her name. I'm going to copy it. But so I'm always like, is it weird for me to try and say like Benito?
You
You know
gotta
what
do
I
it with
mean?
the hand, though.
I gotta do it. I'm Italian again. This is my Italian. This is my Italian. I know he's not
It's
Italian,
only
but
good if you do it with the hand.
that's what comes out.
And unfortunately, that really depends on who you're speaking with, because my
Right.
friends have brought that up. And I tell them, with me, please, by all means, practice the Spanish accent, not the Americanized one. Because I find it I actually find it very beautiful when a non-Spanish speaker says, I'm like, oh, that sounds so good.
Mhm.
It's like, I think the effort is so sexy. It's like it's so attractive. I'm like, this is so cool. It just says so much about you and your effort to try to get my name correct.
Mm.
But if you can't, that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have an opportunity to share a story that happened with me in where I really offended somebody.
Okay.
Mm.
I live in a town that is predominantly Mexican, um, and I at the time was working at a restaurant, and the guys in the kitchen I would always practice with. It was fun. They made so much fun of my accent, and it was hilarious, right? But I was trying to improve my Spanish. And then after work, I'd gone and I spoke Spanish. I said one sentence in a group of friends who some of them were Mexican. There was also some of white friends there too. And the one guy got completely offended, like I was speaking in Spanish because I assumed he didn't know how to speak English. I was like,
Oh, yeah.
no, I was just practicing. That's all I was doing, you know? So a moment of, okay, well, I guess I won't do that again. But then also, um, my intention was good, but it was not received well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it still feels like, oh man, I screwed up. That was
And
like
Yeah.
15
it
years ago.
happens. Yeah, I'm sorry that happened to you. It sucks. I know how it feels because it has happened to me several times because it happens with Latinos as well. My daughter just recently told me, Nadia, she was like, Mommy, I don't understand why this lady got so mad at me. She's like, she said, you know, I spoke to her in Spanish because I could tell she was struggling with her English. And she cursed me out. She's like, what do you think? I don't know speak, I'm speaking to you in English. Why are you speaking to me in Spanish? I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. She was just trying to help.
Yeah.
She was, and it happens. It has happened so many times to me and obviously my kids. You're not alone. It doesn't feel good and it's not right. But I think the best thing that you can do is say, I was just trying to be respectful. I didn't
Mhm.
mean to insult you.
It wasn't even that I was being respectful or disrespectful. I was just
Trying to practice.
speaking and having fun. It was like a fun event. It wasn't serious. I knew he spoke English. I knew him.
Yeah.
So the why he got so upset, I don't know. It was weird.
Again, past trauma. A lot of us have a lot of past trauma. Like I remember growing up, I was so ashamed of my mother's English because it was a heavy accent, and we get made fun of. So in our home, we were not allowed to speak Spanish because she did not want us to go through what she was going through. My mom missed out on a lot of school events because she was too embarrassed. She never went to PTA. She didn't go to join, like normal moms. Um, and she really wanted us to not have an accent because if you don't have an accent, you're going to get treated better. Sadly, it's true. You're going to get better jobs. Sadly, it's true. But just remember that though you will speak it very good, write it very well, you're still going to be Latina to some people. So you can only get so far. And you have to just accept that and go go and do the best that you can anyway to try to overcome that. Um, it's just a reality. But I think that as women overall, regardless of what shade, ethnicity, race, you know what that feels like. There's only so far, and then we have to try to break through that barrier, and the same is with other things. So it's not fair, but it's a reality. And I think that,
Remembering.
yeah, remembering that helps me ground myself when I'm dealing with other people who are different so that I don't get into my own biases that I hear. Like just jokes alone can be so harmful, especially with children, if you're not having that conversation with them about, hey, that's just a joke. Don't believe that. It is just a joke, just like we joke about our own things. It's sometimes the way that we deal with pain, with the trauma of this having happened to you, but it's not a fact for every single person. And I feel like that's what we're lacking today. And I wish more parents had that conversation, at least at home, because I can understand having a conversation with coworkers or like other friends. sometimes even with a boyfriend or girlfriend, it can be uncomfortable. So just starting at home, and all you have to do is start at least with one person that's willing to have the conversation, or like grab a book, that can give you a different perspective. Like one book I'll never forget is, I think it was called like The Pearl That Broke Its Shell. It was about an Afghan woman, and it was beautiful because it talks about the strife, the culture as a woman, what happens, the Taliban being inculcated in her community, and then also like the waves of when they were here, when they were not here, and how it changed like women's lives. So insightful. I cried. I cried a lot with that book. But it was so beautiful to learn even about like the burqa and why women don't inherit as much from certain for in like land or assets, because in the culture the man's supposed to have the responsibility of taking care of the woman, therefore he will inherit more so he can take care of her. And I didn't know that. I thought it was just misogynistic thing, and of course some people turn that into a misogynistic thing, but just having that conversation, I was like, oh, I'm not gonna assume anymore that it's a misogynistic culture and that's why they do that. But this happens with everything. I mean, misogynism that just exists in every single, area of the world. But anyway, yeah, thank you so much for this conversation.
Oh, this was excellent.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm always
Thank you
here
so
to.
much for doing it.
Yeah. All
Yeah.
right. Well, if there's nothing else, I'll let you all have the rest of your evening.
All right. Thank you, Dolly. This was
You're
awesome.
welcome.
Really
Debbie,
appreciate it.
thank you for being
Thank you.
here. Of course, both of you, Nancy and Amy, for this opportunity. I hope that people really enjoy the replay.